Chapter 1044. The extreme-grade metal Yi Chun had purchased in Blue Leaf City was enough to forge 300 to 400 extreme-grade swords. Among them, the metal and water-attributed materials made up about 1/5 of the total, which was about 70 extreme-grade swords. Apart from the slightly higher failure rate in the beginning, the success rate in the later stages was 100%. Therefore, with this 1/5 of the materials, Yi Chun had forged 54 extreme-grade swords in total. Among them, 25 were low-grade, 22 were mid-grade, and 7 were high-grade. It was not only because of Yi Chun's improvement in the later stages, but also because of the quality of the materials. The more powerful the sword, the better the materials needed. The weaker the sword was, the better the materials would be. When there were 54 extreme-grade swords on the third floor, another 4 months had passed. Subtracting the previous 7 swords, Yi Chun had forged an average of 12 swords in a month. If this were to be spread out, it would shake the entire Firebird Star. No, the entire Vermilion Bird Star region. 12 swords in a month meant 144 swords in a year, and 1,440,000 swords in 10,000 years. Even if only 10,000 years of one's life were spent on forging swords, one would be able to create hundreds of millions of swords. And this was under the condition that one's level did not increase. Lifefire City was extremely vast, occupying an area of a few thousand li naturally. The majority of the area was the outer city. The inner city only occupied an area of about 100 li, and the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion, which was located on the western main street of the inner city, had become extremely popular recently. All the life and death swordsmen living in Lifefire City basically knew that the Falling Flower Sword Pavilion had a large number of peak-grade swords that had yet to be sold. These swords were all of extremely high quality, containing either a powerful immortal sword intent or a destructive sword intent. They were many times more valuable compared to other swords of the same grade. Yifeng, have you heard? Mr. Falling Dust Sword will start selling those extreme-grade swords next week. However, there is a rule in the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion, and that is, if the profounds do not match the extreme-grade swords, they will not be sold to him. Your profounds just happen to include the water profounds, which is completely in line with the rules. Inside a tea house, 2 life and death realm warriors were chatting. They are going to be sold next week. That's great. A look of joy appeared on the middle-aged man's face. 2 months ago, he had gone to the Fallout Sword Pavilion. He had been waiting for the day the top-quality sword would be sold, because he had his eyes on the Songhai sword. At the same time, everyone was talking about the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion. A week passed by quickly, and the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion immediately became the center of the West Main Street. Hundreds of life and death realm sword artists came and went. Among them, 80% didn't cultivate metal profound or water profound, but the remaining 20% still amounted to nearly 100 people. 54 supreme-grade swords on the third floor were completely sold in half an afternoon. 54 top-grade swords cost me a total of 46,000 primordial stones. Why do I feel like I've made a loss? Yi Chun smiled bitterly. In the universe, low-grade supreme-grade weapons were usually sold for 200 to 300 primordial stones. Mid-grade supreme-grade weapons were 500 to 700 primordial stones, and high-grade supreme-grade weapons were 1,000 to 1,500 primordial stones. On average, a low-grade supreme-grade sword could be sold for 400 primordial stones. 25 of them would be 10,000 primordial stones. 1,000 primordial stones for 1,000 primordial stones. 22 of them would be 22,000 primordial stones, and high-grade supreme-grade swords would be 2,000 primordial stones. 7 of them would be 14,000 primordial stones, making it a total of 46,000 primordial stones. It didn't seem like a lot, but it wasn't a loss at all. Instead, it was a huge profit. Yi Chun had spent 20 to 30,000 primordial stones to buy the materials, but he had only used about 1/5 of them. The top-grade swords made from this 1/5 of the materials were sold for 46,000 primordial stones. Not only did he earn back the cost of the materials, he also earned about 20,000 primordial stones. With these 46,000 primordial stones, Yi Chen didn't lack primordial stones for the time being. As for spending 150,000 primordial stones to rent the weapon shop, that was something he had no other choice. After all, he had to plan for the future. This famous weapon shop was like a mother hen, constantly producing primordial stones. If he didn't rent the weapon shop, even though 150,000 primordial stones seemed like a lot, it would be used up one day. At that time, he wouldn't even have enough primordial stones to rent the weapon shop. Right now, I have a 100% success rate in forging metal and water attribute top-grade swords, but I haven't forged a Heavenly King stage sword yet. To forge a Heavenly King stage sword, the main material must be Heavenly King stage. Let's go to the Five Elements land first. That is the most violent place on the Firebird star, and it has nurtured countless kinds of metal materials. Yi Chen liked to finish everything he did, successfully forging a metal and water attribute Heavenly King stage sword was his first destination. White Tiger Starfield, in the deep starry sky near the giant blade star. A sabersman and a swordsman were facing off against each other, and there were two young people watching from the side. The sabersman was the lifeless sabersman Lung Fifan. The swordsman was a young man dressed in blue, with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. However, his blue clothes were different from Yi Chen's. Yi Chen's was sky blue, while his was azure blue. The two young people watching the battle were a man and a woman. The man had broad shoulders and a slim waist, and a pair of wolf-like eyes. Obviously, he was not human. The woman had a voluptuous body, and was as beautiful as spring water. She wore a green dress, and carried a hexagonal short stick on her back. She looked both heroic and flirtatious. These four people were all monstrous geniuses on the Heavenly King list. Not to mention Lung Fifan. The swordsman in blue was the flawless swordsman, Zhao Wuk, ranked 11th on the Heavenly King list. The inhuman young man was the strange speed wolf king, ranked 14th on the Heavenly King list. The beautiful woman in green was the violent queen, Yan Feihua, ranked 8th on the Heavenly King list. Zhao Wuk, the divine trial field is about to open. You don't have to fight me now. Lung Fifan said. I said that we will fight in 3 years. Now 3 years have passed. Zhao Wuk's eyes were sharp, and they could see through everything. Are you sure you want to challenge me now? I am afraid that you will lose to me again, and it will hurt your spirit. Why don't you save your energy and wait for the divine trial field to open? Lung Fifan did not want to fight Zhao Wuk. Zhao Wuk seems to be underestimated. Yan Feihua smiled like a flower. Zhao Wuk is quite stubborn. He didn't challenge anyone else but Lung Fifan. The divine trial field is about to open. Who would want to expose too many trump cards? The strange speed wolf king shook his head. Make your move. Zhao Wuk did not waver. He had lost to Lung Fifan 3 years ago. 3 years later, he had to fight Lung Fifan no matter what. Lung Fifan was his shackle. Only by breaking this shackle could he improve faster. All right, be careful. Seeing that he could not dissuade Zhao Wuk, Lung Fifan's eyes gradually turned cold. His emotionless eyes were like those of a demon god. It made Yan Feihua and the strange speed wolf king, who were standing far away, become serious. This was the real Lung Fifan. Once he got serious, he would be like a demon god. Clang! Zhao Wuk took the initiative to draw his sword. His body flashed, and he appeared in front of Lung Fifan as if he had teleported. He slashed down with his sword. This sword attack was extremely fast and flawless. Dang! Lung Fifan drew his blade as well. He waved his blade and blocked Zhao Wuk's sword. The blade chi and sword chi merged together, shattering a small star nearby into pieces. It has begun. On Lung Fifan's cheek, a wisp of blood floated up, and a thin sword mark appeared there at a sharp angle. As expected of the flawless swordsman, at the critical moment, you have reached the edge of the selfless Heavenly Eyes realm. Putting his saber back into its sheath, Lung Fifan revealed a faint smile. Just now, if Zhao Wuk had not broken through, he would not have been able to block that attack. Even if that attack could not kill him, it would have made him lose more than 90% of his power. However, there were no ifs. Zhao Wuk had reached this realm after all. Not only had he neutralized 70% of the Azura Chop's power, but he had also counterattacked, causing the sword chi to graze his cheek. This time, The god's test field will be quite lively. Yan Feihua's eyes flashed with excitement. How could she not see that Zhao Wuk had already reached a higher level of the selfless heavenly eyes realm? The selfless heavenly eyes did not only strengthen the eyes, but also the senses of the whole person, such as the five senses. It should be known that all of a person's actions depended on the five senses. Everything in the world had a flaw. Although it seemed like there was no flaw, it was actually because one's realm was not high enough. When the five senses reached a certain level, nothing could hide from one's perception. Cough. A few thousand li away, Zhao Wuk coughed out mouthfuls of blood. His body was on the verge of breaking into pieces, covered with deep cuts. These cuts kept on wriggling. In a short period of time, it was impossible for him to recover with his immortal body. The destructive saber intent and saber chi contained in the cuts were still present. What an impressive Azura chop! Zhao Wuk raised his head and fixed his gaze on Lung Fifan. Lung Fifan said, "Being able to survive my Azura chop, you can barely be considered as one of my strong opponents. However, if you really want me to go all out, you'll have to at least reach the selfless heavenly eyes realm. Otherwise, I'll kill you for real next time." As the last sentence was spoken, it was as if a demonic figure had appeared behind Lung Fifan. Still not going all out? Zhao Wuk had no idea how much of Lung Fifan's strength had been used, but he still had to thank him. Without the pressure from Lung Fifan, he would not have been able to reach the selfless heavenly eyes realm so early. Ehe, what an exciting battle. Lung Fifan, I'm looking forward to fighting you in the divine trial field. Zhao Wuk, you'll be even stronger the next time we meet. Otherwise, it'll be boring if you only have a few opponents. Yan Feihua had already left, her voice reverberating in the same place. She's moving so fast. Why do I feel like I might not be able to suppress her in terms of speed? The eccentric Wolf King rubbed his chin as his body gradually faded. See you two at the divine trial field. Swoosh. Each of his 5 fingers released a strand of sword chi. The 5 strands of sword chi interweaved together, forming a horrifying sword chi tornado that sliced the Gold Spirit King into nothingness. The sword intent contained within it even destroyed the latter's consciousness, making it unable to reassemble its body. Killing the Gold Spirit King was as easy as lifting a finger for Yi Chun. He gradually entered the depths of the Land of 5 Elements. The Land of 5 Elements was filled with all kinds of Yuan Qi living beings, such as the Gold Spirit King, Wood Spirit King, Water Spirit King, Fire Spirit King, and Earth Spirit King. In the area where Yi Chun was, the Gold Spirit King was the most numerous. Uncle, we can't hold on much longer. Let's retreat. In the depths of the Land of 5 Elements, the Demi-Beast Kings were killed one after another. Only the 2 most powerful Demi-Beast Kings were fleeing in panic. Of these 2 Demi-Beast Kings, one was a middle-aged man with a cultivation base of 5th layer life and death realm, and the other was a young man in embroidered robes with a cultivation base of 4th layer life and death realm. Their opponent was a powerful Gold Spirit King. This Gold Spirit King was twice the size of an ordinary Gold Spirit King. Its body was not pure gold, but rather dark gold. One of its arms had transformed into a huge blade, while the other into a long sword. Blade light and sword shadows filled the air, and nothing could stop it. Even if we want to retreat now, it won't let us go. The middle-aged Demi-Beast King smiled bitterly. The dark Gold Spirit King charged over. Its right hand transformed into a huge blade, and a huge crack appeared on the ground. The ground of the Land of 5 Elements was extremely hard. Being able to leave a mark on it was already quite good. Only a 5th layer life and death realm expert could do such a thing. The middle-aged Demi-Beast King was also a 5th layer life and death realm expert, but his attack couldn't even break through the Gold Spirit King's defense. On the other hand, the opponent's attack could easily cut through his protective Zhen Yuan. Uncle, someone is coming. While fighting, the young man didn't forget to observe the surroundings. Yeah, be careful. Those who appear here are not good people. The middle-aged Demi-Beast King retreated while fighting. Soon a human figure flew over. Suddenly, the figure accelerated and flashed toward the middle-aged Demi-Beast King. Not good. Be careful. The middle-aged Demi-Beast King was shocked, thinking that the opponent was going to hit him while he was down. Pung. The dark gold spirit king was blown away, its body shattering into pieces. Fortunately, he didn't hit him while he was down. But what a powerful attacking power. It actually shattered this gold spirit king. This gold spirit king's defense has reached the extreme rank mid-rank armor level. The two were extremely shocked. This gold spirit king was not an ordinary one, but a 5 elements gold spirit king. Its defense was extremely frightening, and anyone below the 6th layer of life and death realm would not be able to injure it. Chapter 1046. The defense is comparable to the middle grade armor. As expected of the 5 elements gold spirit king, Yichen exclaimed in admiration. Supreme grade armors were extremely difficult to destroy. Even a low-grade supreme grade armor was not something an ordinary king could break. At most, it would leave behind a mark. For example, when Yichen fought Giant Demon Emperor, the low-grade supreme grade armor on his body wasn't destroyed. In terms of toughness, mid-grade supreme grade armors were 10 times stronger than low-grade supreme grade armors. From this, one could see how powerful the defense of 5 elements gold spirit king was, as well as how frightening Yichen's palm containing 5 sword chi was. Clang, clang, clang. The twisted sound of metal rubbing against each other rang out, and the 5 elements gold spirit king's shattered body once again condensed together. The golden liquid at the wound squirmed and quickly stuck together, and at the same time, his body compressed a little, making his entire body look even more solid and heavy. Just looking at it with the naked eye, it gave off an unbearable feeling. Every time the 5 elements gold spirit king is shattered, the strength of its body will increase. Unless it is destroyed in an instant, or when the strength of its body increases to the limit of its endurance, it will not die. Young master, thank you for helping us repel the 5 elements gold spirit king just now, but do not fight it head on. The middle-aged half-demon king reminded Yichen. Every time it breaks, the strength of its body increases by 1. Interesting. Reaching out with his right hand, Yichen grabbed the hilt of the demon slayer sword and turned to the two of them. You guys stay away. Young master, you. The middle-aged half-demon king was helpless and retreated far away with the young half-demon king. The speed of the 5 elements gold spirit king was very fast. With a flash of golden light, its sharp body was like a machete as it slashed over. But the fatal thing was not its body, but its arms that had turned into swords. It crossed its arms and slashed towards Yichen's head. And what was even more terrifying was that its body also released a circle of golden light domain, sealing Yichen's body. It actually has a natural domain. A hint of surprise flashed on Yichen's face. Oh, the sword domain was released, and the golden light domain was forced back. Then, the sword domain turned the tables and enveloped the 5 elemental metal spirit king. Yichen's sword domain had already reached the 4th layer. As soon as the 5 elemental metal spirit king was enveloped by the sword domain, its speed instantly decreased, as if it had fallen into a swamp. On the other hand, Yichen's speed erupted, and he brushed past the 5 elemental metal spirit king's body. Kacha! The body of the 5 elements gold spirit king froze in midair. In the next moment, it was split into 2. It was not over yet. The 2 halves of the body seemed to be in the middle of a storm of sword chi, breaking apart from the inside out. Almost every metal particle was cut by a tiny sword chi, which was violent and dense. Second drive. The best way to break an undying body or vitality life form was to use multiple stacks. The first stacks would shatter its structure, and the second stacks would destroy it completely. Although killing moves with great destructive power could also completely annihilate the opponent, it was not like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Multiple stacks were much simpler. Moreover, multiple drives should not be underestimated. The first and second drive were nothing, but the third drive was equivalent to a powerful killing move. The fourth drive could destroy almost everything, and the fifth drive was a forbidden area. This is the second drive. The young half-beast king's eyesight was not weak. Second drive. The middle-aged half-beast king looked at him. The young half-beast king said, 2 years ago, I saw a battle between the Sky King list warriors. Both of them could use the second drive. I did not see it at that time, but there were powerful warriors among the spectators. After listening to their explanations, I realized that the explosion was a phenomenon of multiple drives. In the end, one of them even used the third drive and defeated his opponent. So it was multiple drives. No wonder he could easily split the body of the 5-elemental metal spirit king. The middle-aged half-beast king said slowly, "Sha sha 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 sha." Metal particles flew all over the sky. With a point as the center, they rotated and condensed. Because there were too many metal particles, the friction was too strong. That place, blazing flames and lightning shot out, and a fine whirlwind cut the ground. Even the second drive doesn't work? Yi Chen turned around. In the blink of an eye, the body of the 5 elements metal spirit king was successfully reconstructed. What made people despair was that its body became smaller again, which meant that its defense had increased by a lot. Since the second drive doesn't work, then the 3 drive. Raising the demon slaughtering sword high up, Yi Chen slashed out vertically. An intense red light seemed to seep into the space, dyeing the 5 elements metal spirit king dark red. Countless fine sword marks appeared on the surface of its body. Pa pa pa. The body of the 5 elements gold spirit king instantly exploded into millions of metal particles, which then exploded into metal dust. The dust was then annihilated into nothingness and turned into the purest energy, which was then absorbed by the 5-colored wind and blown in all directions, in the sky and on the ground. 3 drive, it's a lie, right? He can actually use 3 drive? The young half-beast king opened his mouth, unable to close it. Obviously, the 5 elements metal spirit king couldn't withstand the 3 drive from Yi Chen, and was completely destroyed. I thought the 3 drive wouldn't work. That's right. Although the 5 elements metal spirit king's defense is powerful and has no weaknesses, its consciousness shouldn't be that strong. Otherwise, it wouldn't have turned into nothingness so easily. Every cell in Yi Chen's body contained the rank 5 immortal sword intent. Even those who were much stronger than Yi Chen could only injure his body. They couldn't smash him into pieces unless they were 10 times stronger than him. If the 5 elements metal spirit king's consciousness was a little stronger, maybe Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to kill it with 3 drive. After all, for a living being with flesh and blood, having such a strong defense should be a body refinement king. And a body refinement king wouldn't die so easily. As for the multiple drive, Yi Chen had mastered it a long time ago. When he fought against the troll emperor, Yi Chen could use 2 times the power of his sword. That was the embryonic form of the second drive. At that time, he had just entered the palace of controlling power, so he didn't have the time to study the multiple drive. It had been 2 years since the disaster of the alien race, so no one knew what level he had reached. You two, hurry up and leave. More 5 elements metal spirit kings are coming, and there's more than one. Yi Chen said to the 2 half-beast kings. Qinglei, let's go. Yes, uncle. The uncle and nephew left quickly. They had brought many powerful warriors to the 5 elements realm, but in the end, only the 2 of them were left. If the 2 of them were to die, the family would suffer a great loss. Time to enjoy. After the 2 left, Yi Chen could test his moves to his heart's content. He knew more than just the multiple drive. Jinghong Young Master is back. He's challenging the Phantom Sword King at Wild Gazing Plains. Wild Gazing Plains, challenging the Phantom Sword King. The Firebird continent had 3 main cities. One was Firebird City, the other was Fire City, and the last was Jinghong City. On this day, in the tea houses, restaurants, and streets of Jinghong City, the news was spreading everywhere. Jinghong Young Master, the leader of the Firebird planet's 10 heroes, had returned, and immediately challenged the Phantom Sword King. The Phantom Sword King was the leader of the Firebird planet's 10 heroes 10 years ago. The rules of the Firebird planet's 10 heroes were the same as the Heavenly King ranking. Only those under 50 could enter, and those over 50 would lose the right. The Phantom Sword King was 60 this year, and exactly 50 10 years ago. As the leader of the Firebird planet's 10 heroes 10 years ago, the Phantom Sword King might not have entered the Heavenly King ranking, but it didn't mean he was weaker than the Jinghong Young Master. On the contrary, he might even be stronger than the monstrous genius ranked 90th on the Heavenly King ranking. A year ago, The Jinghong young master had challenged the Phantom Sword King and lost miserably. This time, he was here to wash away his shame. Only by defeating the opponent who had defeated him could he improve faster. This was the saying of the geniuses. Flawless sword artist Zhao Wuk was like this, and so was the Jinghong young master. Wild gazing plains, a large number of life and death kings had already gathered here. Everyone's gazes were focused on two people. One was a young man with a ghostly aura, and the other was a skinny young man wearing a yellow robe. They were indeed the Phantom Sword King and the Jinghong young master. One of them was the leader of the Firebird Planet's 10 heroes, and the other was the current leader. Jinghong young master, it's only been a year, and you've already come to challenge me. Seems like you've improved a lot. The Phantom Sword King said indifferently. The Jinghong young master said, only by defeating you will I have the right to enter the God test field. If I can't even beat you, then no matter how much I improve, I won't be able to surpass those people. Indeed, it's for the God test field. Unfortunately, I failed in the first round back then. The Phantom Sword King looked up at the sky, his face full of emotions. However, I won't let you win just because I want to help you. If you want to beat me, you'll have to use battle power that surpasses your limits. Otherwise, even if you go, you'll still lose. Of course. What kind of victory would it be if you let me win? Under everyone's gazes, the two exchanged blows. They went all out right from the start. The Phantom Sword King's sword art was ethereal like a ghost, twisting its trajectory, while the Jinghong young master's sword art was fast. Is this the power of the leader of the Firebird Planet's 10 heroes? He's not even in the same dimension as us. The ground was sliced open, and the sword chi interweaved. The two figures continuously flashed, clashed, and brushed past each other before turning back to attack. This is the result of my 1 year of training. Take this. After hundreds of exchanges, the two were still evenly matched. Right at this moment, the Jinghong young master's sword speed increased by a couple of times, seeming to increase twice in a row. Third drive. The Phantom Sword King's pupils dilated. So what if it's third drive? Illusion and reality overlay. Sword shadows flew everywhere, as the Phantom Sword King's sword art was used to the limit. One bright and one dark. The two sword shadows overlapped and met the opponent's attack. Clang! The two swords clashed, and the Phantom Sword King's arm shook violently. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he flew backward. Third drive had already surpassed normal top-rank profound martial arts. The power of the three strikes was even more unbearable. I won. The Terpsichore prince was panting heavily. In order to use 3 stacks, he had received the cruel training that his master had arranged for him over the past year. He had not had a single day of rest. However, if he could defeat the Phantom Sword King, it would all be worth it. Li Jinghong, you've finally beaten me. There's still half a year until the God's trial field. I hope you won't slack off in this half a year. The Phantom Sword King was not dejected. The new beating the old was something that happened every day in the universe. He was not missing. Don't worry. From now on, I won't lose to anyone easily. The Jinghong young master's body released a wisp of faintly discernible aura, as if he had unlocked some shackles. You've already reached third drive? Looks like I've fallen behind too much in my 5 years of slumber. Luckily, with Mr. Ye's guidance, I've successfully reached second drive. Lan Xian'er was in the crowd. In the 5 years of slumber, she had been stagnant, while others had advanced by leaps and bounds. However, the stronger the Jinghong young master became, the more respect Lan Xian'er had for Yi Chen. If he could make her grow this much with just a few months of guidance, then just how powerful was his own realm? Chapter 1047. White Gold Stone. Dragon Spring Iron. Although the 5 elements land was indescribably dangerous, it couldn't obstruct Yi Chen in the slightest. After a week, Yi Chen had obtained 2 kinds of Heavenly King grade metals: White Gold Stone and Dragon Spring Iron. White Gold Stone was a kind of white gold stone. A fist-sized piece weighed over 10,000 jin, and one would feel a stabbing pain in the hand. This was the unique sharpness of white gold stone. Anyone below life and death realm would be turned into a hornet's nest just by touching it. Swords forged from white gold stone were exceptionally sharp and intimidating. Yi Chen had obtained a total of 2 pieces, one fist-sized and the other palm-sized. Both were worth no less than 2,000 yuan stones. Dragon spring iron was even more famous than white gold stone. It was a kind of water-attributed metal material. At first glance, it looked like a block of solidified spring water. However, its weight was even greater than white gold stone. A fist-sized block weighed 18,000 jin. Dragon spring iron was extremely tough, and its extensibility was second to none. A treasured sword made from it was a combination of hardness and softness. It could bend and stretch, and it could be wrapped around the waist. The 5 elements land is indeed a treasure land. I actually found white gold stone and dragon spring iron. These 2 materials were among the top treasures in the books on metal materials. Obtaining one was a huge stroke of luck, and obtaining the second could only be described as a rainbow of luck. With the white gold stone and dragon spring iron, Yi Chen had no intention of staying. He directly flew into the sky and boarded the Golden Phantom, flying toward Firebird Continent's Flame City. Young Master Yi, you're finally here. On the first floor of the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion, Lan Xian had been waiting for a long time. Yi Chen was startled, then smiled. How did you find me? The Falling Dust Sword Pavilion's name has been rising in Flame City recently, so I came to take a look. I found dozens of pseudo-supreme grade swords on the second floor that contained young Master Ye's sword intent. So I knew that this Falling Dust Sword Pavilion is related to young Master Yi. Lan Xian said honestly. So that's how it is. Come, let's go to the courtyard. There was a large courtyard behind the Falling Dust Sword Pavilion. 800 meters below the courtyard one could forge swords. This was the complete Falling Dust Sword Pavilion. Both 2 of them went to the courtyard, and Yi Chen brewed tea for the other party. Lord Yi, I hope that you will continue to teach me. I am different from my sister. She doesn't have a strong competitive spirit, and doesn't ask for much. I, on the other hand, want to make a name for myself in the divine trial field. Lan Xian didn't hide her intentions, or her competitive personality. She knew that she couldn't hide anything from this man. His all-seeing eye could see through even the smallest details. Yi Chen didn't reply directly. He flicked his hand, and an iron stake forged from star iron pierced deep into the ground of the courtyard. 7 consecutive stabs. All right. Lan Xian didn't know Yi Chen's intentions, but she didn't want to suspect anything. She stood up, pulled out the sword at her waist, and stabbed the star iron pillar. Then she stabbed it 6 times in a row. Each stab is a millimeter deeper. This proves that you have the potential to open the selfless realm. Yi Chen could see that Lan Xian was improving with each stab. This sounded exaggerated, but it wasn't at all. A millimeter was hard to detect with soul power. The improvement was very small, but it was still improvement. This was something that ordinary geniuses couldn't do. Only geniuses who were constantly improving could do it. The selfless realm? Lan Xian had heard of it, but she had never seen it. The selfless realm is divided into the spiritual level and the ego level. In the early days, when we cultivated, we would pursue a state of selfless cultivation. That was the spiritual level. The spiritual level could allow one to be very focused, but it couldn't surpass oneself. The ego level, on the other hand, could achieve this. Hearing this, Lan Xian nodded. She wasn't a stranger to the state of selfless cultivation. Basically, anyone with a bit of talent could cultivate in a state of selfless cultivation. The ego level is to be clear about oneself, and then forget oneself. Only by becoming familiar with every bit of oneself, and understanding the secrets of one's body, can one truly forget oneself, and enter an unprecedented realm. This realm is the selfless realm that I speak of. The selfless realm had already been opened in Dugaju, but that was when he was in a state of madness. It was unknown if he had truly opened it now. At the last moment, Lu Xiaoyu had pushed the selfless realm to the selfless realm, but that was at the cost of burning his life. It wasn't a normal method. Why were Dugaju and Lu Xiaoyu able to open it so early? No matter how much Yi Chen thought about it, he still felt that it was because Elysium was too closed, so his cultivation couldn't improve. As a result, he was already very familiar with his own body. At every moment, he had to squeeze something out of it. That was why 2 of them had entered the selfless realm. As for Yi Chen himself, He surprisingly didn't enter the selfless realm. But he didn't feel that it was strange. The selfless realm was a situation where one already knew their limits. Yi Chen still couldn't determine where his limits were. No matter how much he squeezed, he could still improve. In the battle with the Troll Emperor, his repeated breakthroughs were proof. Moreover, his soul power was too strong, and his brain cells were abnormally active. This also increased the difficulty of opening the selfless realm. However, although he didn't open the selfless realm, Yi Chen's control of power had already reached an unfathomable level. To open the selfless realm, the level of power control must be high. This was the prerequisite of the prerequisite. If the level of power control didn't meet the requirements, the body wouldn't be able to cooperate. Yi Chen let Lan Xian study the basic swordsmanship so that she could improve the level of power control. This was to build a foundation for her. Then what should I do? Lan Xian asked. It's very simple. Continue to study the basic swordsmanship. This star iron pillar, after being smelted, is as hard as a low-grade armor. If you can pierce it with your sword within a month, I will give you special training. If you can't, then you should go back. I can't teach you too much here. There are many things that you can't rely on others. To open the selfless realm, the level of power control must be high. Lan Xian was still a bit lacking, unless she was like Dugu Ju and Lu Xiaoyu, opening it in an abnormal state. But that kind of opening had too many drawbacks. It wasn't the same as opening under the selfless realm. Okay. Lan Xian bit her lip. She knew that this was a test that Yi Chen gave her. If she couldn't even pass this test, then she wasn't worthy of being taught. Now, can you tell me what the God test field is? Yi Chen asked at this time. Lan Xian knew that Yi Chen came from some living world, so he might not have heard of the God test field. She said, the God test field is the true God test field. Inside is the mighty power of the true God. Only those under 50 years of age can enter. Once you completely pass the test, you will have the qualifications to enter the God paradise. I don't know anything else. True God. The true God test field. Could the legend be true? Legend had it that the realm after life and death realm was true God realm. This was a legendary realm. Life and death realm could be found, but true God realm was not. Therefore, true God realm was a legendary realm. However, no one had ever seen a true God, and no one knew what it was. What kind of method was there to cultivate to true God realm? Everything was unknown. I also don't know if true God is real or not, but the God test field and the God paradise have existed since ancient times. The mighty power inside is something that even the ninth sky of life and death realm can't see through, and they can't force their way in. I think the saying that wind can't come from an empty cave is most likely true. Lan Xian spoke her opinion. These things are too far away from us. When we reach that step, we will know whether or not it is true. Yi Chen didn't dwell too much on whether true God existed or not. Days passed by, and soon, half a month had passed. In this half a month, Yi Chen had already started forging Heavenly King grade swords. He didn't have much white gold stone and dragon spring iron, so he could only forge one Heavenly King grade sword at most. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless and poured his heart and soul into it, leaving Lan Xian outside. In this half a month, Lan Xian didn't sleep or rest, working extremely hard. She knew that if she still couldn't pierce through the star iron pillar with triple force, she would lose her chance. As long as I reach the triple force realm, I can completely pierce through the star iron pillar. But how can I reach the triple force realm? Up until now, Lan Xian could only pierce through 1/3 of the star iron pillar. She was 2/3 away from completely piercing through. Ordinary people would have already lost hope. It's a little difficult to go from the second force to the triple force in a month. Moreover, she had been asleep for 5 years. Even if I taught her for 3 months, it would be like pulling up seedlings to help them grow. This caused her foundation to be solid, but her understanding wasn't enough, and she couldn't make full use of it. She didn't know when, but Yi Chen walked out. Xian young Master Yi. Lan Xian was too focused and quickly turned her head. Think more and you can do better. You don't sleep or rest, and you don't give yourself a chance to think. It's easy for you to go berserk and create a knot in your heart. Yi Chen reminded her. But Lan Xian'er was very unwilling. How about this? In the next few days, you can watch me forge the sword from the side. It should be beneficial to you. Yi Chen felt that it was necessary to help her. Ding ding dang dang. Bright sparks flew, and the sword intent burst forth. On the sword furnace, Yi Chen constantly hammered the sword embryo. The iron hammer in his hand was like an iron sword. Every strike would produce a huge vibration force, accompanied by a peerless sword intent. This was the vibration sword intent forging method that Yi Chen had comprehended himself. It could fully fuse the materials together and use the sword intent to clear the meridians. Lan Xian'er watched from the side, inexplicably shocked. Normally, when forging a sword, one would have to be extremely careful. Most of the time, they would be testing it out. When the hammer truly fell, they would have already figured out how to forge the sword. However, Yi Chen's sword forging gave people the feeling of a sword artist waving his sword. It was continuous, decisive, sharp and majestic without any hesitation. Watching him forge the sword, one's heart seemed to have become a sword embryo, constantly being hammered and forged. Gradually, one's sword heart became clearer and clearer. This was both a sword forging method and a way to temper the sword heart. Chapter 1048. After watching for 3 days, Lan Xian'er returned to the surface under Yi Chen's instructions and continued to stab the star iron pillar. 5 days later, Lan Xian'er had stabbed 2/3 of the way through. She had reached the third drive realm, but the third drive could not overlap with the previous 2 drives. It was not complete, so she could not pierce through the star iron pillar. Just a bit more. Lan Xian'er returned to the surface to watch Yi Chen forge swords. Yi Chen's swordsmithing technique had long reached the realm of perfection. He had been able to forge 12 supreme-grade swords in a month, because he could see through it. He did not hesitate when forging swords. Every time the hammer fell, he was one step closer to completion. There was no hesitation, no sluggishness. Rather than saying he was forging swords, it was more like he was practicing swords. He practiced to his heart's content. There was no hesitation, no sluggishness. Every move was natural. Sometimes, even he did not know why he would swing the hammer. Clang! Another hammer fell, and sparks flew in all directions. It contained a peerless sword intent. Lan Xian'er wanted to dodge, but she didn't know why she couldn't. With a poochie sound, several sparks pierced through her body, burning her flesh. What was even more terrifying was that even though it was just a few sparks, it was like an invincible sword chi, exploding bloody holes in her body one after another. Countless fine sword chi minced her flesh and blood. Did you comprehend it? Yi Chen asked. I see. Thank you, Mr. Yi. Using the immortal body, Lan Xian'er returned to the surface. Standing in front of the star pillar, she stood there for a day and a night. At dawn, she suddenly pulled out her sword and stabbed at the star pillar. The speed of this stab was unparalleled, like a sword from the gods. Puffed! The star iron pillar was pierced through. Countless cracks appeared around the hole. This was the destructive power of the third drive. The wind blew, and the star iron pillar completely fell apart. After piercing through the star iron pillar, Lan Xian'er smiled. Third drive had been completed. The next 5 months should be enough for her to open the Immortal realm. However, when she thought of the flying sparks, she couldn't help but shiver. Surye's realm had indeed reached an unfathomable realm. Every spark contained the third drive. Although not much power was poured into it, it was still shocking. Young Master Yi is forging a sword, so it's not a good idea to disturb him. I'll continue to familiarize myself with the mysteries of third drive. Lan Xian'er was not in a hurry to find Yi Chen. It was already her fortune that Yi Chen could teach her. Because she wanted to open the Immortal realm, she had to interrupt other people's business. She could not do such a thing, nor could she forgive it. 3 stacks was broad and profound. In the early stages, one could only use it wholeheartedly. In the middle stages, one could use it at will. In the late stages, one could use it at will. As long as one wanted, one could use it from any part of their body. As for Yi Chen's 3 stacks, which could only be executed with sparks flying everywhere, it was impossible to estimate his realm. Another 6 days passed and the month was up. At this time, Lan Xian'er had already stabilized the third drive. She could be considered to be at the peak of the early stages of the third drive. As long as she wasn't too distracted, she could use the third drive. The third drive is indeed powerful. When the third drive is combined, it's not as simple as 3 times the power. The third drive is already more than 10 times the power, and it can completely destroy matter. The first drive could shatter the structure of matter, the second drive could destroy matter itself, and the third drive could annihilate matter's most basic molecules. It seems that you have stabilized the third drive. Next, I will help you open the Immortal realm. Originally, after comprehending the third drive, you should have touched the Immortal realm. However, because the time was too short, you didn't have much time to comprehend it. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 3 years. The third drive was a checkpoint. Breaking through to the third drive meant touching the Immortal realm. Lan Xian'er had lost too much time to comprehend, and now, Yichen wanted to help her break through to the Immortal realm. Helping someone break through to the Immortal realm wasn't something that could be done just by saying it. Yichen was certain that he could do it, because every single one of his cells contained the rank 5 immortal sword intent. Under the operation of the sword intent, he could already deduce a trace of the mysteries of his cells. It might only be 1,000th or even a 10,000th of the mysteries, but he still grasped a trace. The Immortal realm was the effective use of the body's potential under the Immortal realm. This potential was the potential of the cells. Of course, there was no such thing as cells in this world. It was usually described as particles of flesh and blood. As long as he could force out a trace of the cell's potential and combine it with the state of mind, he would be able to achieve the profound meaning of the Immortal realm. At that time, he would naturally be able to effectively use the potential under the Immortal realm. The third drive had already given Lan Xian'er the foundation to open the Immortal realm. What Yichen needed to do next was to push the boat with the current. Force out the human body's potential, and enter the stage of forcing out the human body's potential at any time. These are 2 steps. Attack me with all your strength, and don't hold back. The stronger the better. Yichen said. Yes, Mr. Yi, be careful. Lan Xian'er really didn't hold back. She knew very well that even if her strength increased several times, she wouldn't be able to do anything to Yichen. Holding the sword in her hand, Lan Xian'er slashed at Yichen with all her strength. Yichen stretched out his right hand and spread his fingers. Clang! The palm and sword collided, and Lan Xian'er took half a step back. The strong shockwave spread out, and was absorbed by the restrictions and formations in the courtyard. Okay, I already know your limit. The second time they fought, Yichen only used the same amount of strength as his opponent. The third time was the same. On the 18th time, Yichen's strength began to increase, but it was only a trace. Lan Xian'er could still withstand it. The 19th time, the 20th time, the 98th time, Lan Xian'er couldn't take it anymore. Yichen only increased his strength by a little each time. It didn't seem much, but it was like adding straw to a camel. One day, the camel would be crushed and couldn't get up again. The 100th time, blood flowed from the corner of Lan Xian'er's mouth. The 200th time, the 300th time, puff! Lan Xian'er spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face was pale gold. I think you should be able to last until the 400th time. At the 500th time, your whole body will collapse and your life will be hanging by a thread, Yichen said. Mr. Yi, continue, Lan Xian'er said firmly. Okay. Yichen nodded. He increased his strength bit by bit to force out the other's potential. The reason why he didn't increase his strength to the limit that the other could bear was because it was too dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he could kill the other. If he did that, the other wouldn't be able to comprehend too much. It was the demonic path, not the right path. Of course, not everyone could do what Yichen did. Not to mention Yichen's realm, just his soul power that was 10 times stronger was rare. There had never been a second person who could do it. The 400th time. The 400th time. Lan Xian'er exploded into a bloody mist. After the bloody mist condensed into a human body, her eyes began to dim. The 500th time. Bang! This time, Lan Xian'er only kept a part of the bloody mist. Continue after a week. In the first 500 attacks, Yi Chen didn't use his sword intent. If he did, it would erase the other's soul and will. If it accumulated, she would die without a doubt. But even without sword intent, enduring 500 attacks from Yi Chen wasn't a good thing. Lan Xian'er felt very tired. She couldn't lift any strength in her body. She felt that something was wrong. The undying body also had a limit. It couldn't be used too many times. Obviously, Lan Xian'er's undying body was reaching its limit. A week later, the two fought 720 times. Another week later, the two fought 1,000 times. Week after week. 3.5 months had passed since Lan Xian'er came to Fallen Dust Sword Pavilion. It's time to break through. This time, the two fought 1,888 times. After 1,888 times, boom! A terrifying aura burst out from Lan Xian'er's body. This was a phenomenon forced out by her potential. Lan Xian'er's hair grew longer and shone blue. Her eyes turned silver and extremely focused. Under the selfless realm, her battle intent awakened, and she continued to fight with Yi Chen. Yi Chen smiled indifferently, and chose to collide with the opponent with the same amount of strength. Then he increased his strength every time. It seemed to be endless. But now he began to pour sword intent. Under the selfless realm, Lan Xian'er's battle power reached its peak. Without sword intent, Yi Chen couldn't increase his strength again and again. Lan Xian'er didn't last long after entering the selfless realm for the first time. It was about 15 minutes. During this time she improved a lot. Part of her potential had been transformed into her own battle power. This was the abnormality of the selfless realm. Every time she used it, she would become stronger. Of course, the selfless realm was entered by forcing one's potential. No one dared to enter the selfless realm too often. Although it was possible to improve by leaps and bounds, it was also possible to kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. It would lead to the exhaustion of one's potential, and they would never be able to enter the selfless realm again. Step by step, this was the right way. After all, the potential was limitless, and the human body had its limits. Nearly 4 months passed, and the Heavenly King level sword that Yi Chen had started to forge was finally completed. In these 4 months, he didn't spend much time teaching Lan Xian'er. He came out once a week, and each time was only about an hour. The rest of the time was spent on forging the sword. On this day, the sound of the sword soared into the sky, shattering the clouds. The peerless sword Qi was like a divine dragon, noble and fierce. Underground, Yi Chen held a peerless sword in his hand. This sword was 4 feet and 2 inches long. The body of the sword was like an ancient spring, but it was also suffused with traces of platinum gold. It was hard and soft, and looking down at the sword was like climbing a mountain and looking into an abyss. It was ethereal and deep, as if there were streams of clear spring water flowing down unfathomable. With a flick of his wrist, the body of the sword was like a spirit snake, constantly changing. It was impossible to know where the tip of the sword would appear. It seemed that any point could be attacked, and there were no blind spots. I'll call you the Dragon Spring Sword. The Dragon Spring Sword was hard and soft at the same time. When it was hard, it was invincible, cutting through everything. When it was soft, it was like a stream of water, piercing through any gap. This sword was a Heavenly King level sword with a combination of metal and water attributes. Chapter 1049. Yi Chen didn't plan to sell the Dragon Spring Sword. His demon slaughtering sword was only a high-quality sword, and because of its special attributes, Yi Chen wasn't confident that he could upgrade it to the Heavenly King stage. Therefore, the Dragon Spring Sword would become a great weapon for him. After all, he cultivated the metal and water profound meanings, so there was no barrier between him and the Dragon Spring Sword. Moreover, this time, Lan Xian'er had brought him 94,000 yuan stones. These were the extra yuan stones after selling the 10 demons battleships. In total, there were 394,000 yuan stones. Adding these 94,000 yuan stones, Yi Chen's own yuan stones had reached 140,000, which wasn't a small amount. There was no need to sell the Dragon Spring Sword. However, if I sell this sword, even if it's not as good as the Time Blade, it should still reach 15,000 yuan stones. The price of a Heavenly King stage sword varied from high to low. The lowest was only 3 to 5,000 yuan, while the highest could easily reach tens of thousands. The price of a Heavenly King stage sword was reflected in two aspects: the materials used to forge the sword, and the skills of the person who forged the sword. When the two were combined, the difference in price was too great. Yi Chen had already prepared the Dragon Spring Sword scabbard. This scabbard was made entirely of Dragon Spring iron, and was also priceless. It could also conceal the Dragon Spring Sword's sharpness. Sheathing the sword, Yi Chen returned to the ground. The selfless state wasn't easy to grasp. The first time Lan Xian'er had entered the selfless state was when she was forced by Yi Chen. The second time, without Yi Chen by her side, she had spent a whole 3 days to enter the selfless state. Now, a day had passed since she entered the selfless state for the second time, but she hadn't entered the selfless state for the third time. The secret of the selfless state should be fighting spirit. Your fighting spirit isn't strong enough. Think about why you want to become strong. Think about why those who walk before you can laugh in the starry sky. Their fighting spirit is far above yours. Yi Chen's voice poured into Lan Xian'er's ears. Fighting spirit? I, Lan Xian'er, will not lose to anyone. Yi Chen's voice seemed to have a magical power. Lan Xian'er's eyes burned. Immediately, she entered the selfless realm for the third time. Her blue hair grew long, and her pupils became focused silver. All the power in her body condensed in her body. Potential and true essence mixed together, becoming the power of selfless. While Yi Chen was teaching Lan Xian'er, all the geniuses in the universe were working hard. The gods' trial field was about to open in 2 months. If they didn't work hard, they would likely be surpassed by others. In the end, they would fall short and become someone else's stepping stone. As a genius, no one wanted to fail. Pure Grace City. I, Prince Jinghong, will never become someone else's stepping stone. An apostate breakthrough. On the vast training field, Jinghong's body emitted a terrifying aura. His long hair grew longer, and his eyes turned silver. It was as if he could see through people's souls. Prince Jinghong had also reached the selfless realm. He was different from Lan Xian'er. Lan Xian'er had been asleep for 5 years, and her strength had stagnated. Although she had Yi Chen's guidance, she hadn't comprehended much. Therefore, after reaching 3 drive, she couldn't rely on herself to open the selfless realm in a short period of time. On the other hand, Prince Jinghong had been improving all these years. Coupled with his master's cruel training, he had mastered 3 drive. Opening the selfless realm was a matter of course. Congratulations on entering the selfless realm, Prince. With your strength, you will definitely be ranked in the top 90, or even the top 80. On the side of the training field, the housekeeper of Pure Grace City smiled. It's still not enough. In the remaining 2 months, I have to push the selfless realm to a higher level. Otherwise, I won't be able to stand out. The monsters on the king's list are not that easy to surpass. Prince Jinghong was still not satisfied. If he could improve, so could others. Under his master's cruel training, he could improve by leaps and bounds. His only advantage was his cultivation base, which was at the 5th sky of life and death realm. Even in the king's list, only 30 to 40 people had reached this realm. If he could improve his selfless realm, he had the confidence to enter the top 50, or even higher. On a certain dead star in White Tiger Starfield, a sword artist in blue stood quietly with his eyes closed. He was the flawless swordsman Zhao Wuk. After the battle with the lifeless saber artist Lung Fifan, he had stayed on this dead star for 4 months. Lung Fifan's strength had given him a great shock, and he had obtained great benefits from the duel. In the past 4 months, he had been immersed in the process of breaking through to the selfless realm. Every time he comprehended something, he would enter the selfless realm to digest it. Suddenly he opened his eyes. An extremely frightening aura burst out. In the past, when Zhao Wuk entered the Anatar realm, other than his hair growing longer, his pupils were silvery white. Now his pupils changed from silvery white to a deep silver. In the next moment, specks of gold appeared in the deep silver, adding an indescribable vitality to his focused eyes, and a penetrative power that allowed him to see through the trajectory of the world. Clang! Unsheathing his longsword, Zhao Wuk slashed at the dead star below. This slash was natural and untraceable. yet it seemed to be everywhere. Under this slash, there were no blind spots to speak of. Rumble. This dead star was not very big, only 10,000 li in diameter. After suffering Zhao Wuxi's slash, it actually started disintegrating, leaving only a dark red core. Zhao Wuxi's slash seemed to have found the main weak point of the dead star, and disintegrated it in one fell swoop. This kind of method was many times more difficult than directly shattering the dead star. The former relied on brute force, while the latter relied on one's technique and ability to see through weaknesses to the extreme, easily disintegrating a star. Lung Fifan, thanks to you, I've entered the selfless heaven's eye realm, but I still can't see through your previous realm. Zhao Wuxi was not too excited. He knew that if he challenged Lung Fifan at his current realm, there was no way he could win unless he improved further, and pushed the selfless heaven's eye to a new height. Letting out a breath, Zhao Wuxi flew away from this place. He found a star that was twice the size of this one. This star was brimming with vitality, and its weak point was not so easy to see. Vermilion bird star field on a white star. This star was only several thousand li in diameter. From afar, it was white and looked very cold. However, the temperature on its surface was tens of thousands of degrees, distorting one's vision. If Yi Chen was here, he would definitely recognize that this was a white dwarf star. White dwarfs were a type of star in the late stages of its life. Their density and temperature were very high, and the gravity on their surface reached an exaggerated degree, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of times that of Earth. Even atoms would be crushed, and no matter could exist on their surface. If a human stood on them, they would instantly be vaporized. However, on this white dwarf star, there was a black-robed youngster. He was unexpectedly able to resist the gravity of the white dwarf star. He continuously punched out, and with each punch, ripples would appear in the void, seeming extremely heavy. Being able to resist the gravity of a white dwarf star was a ridiculous feat even for life and death kings. Although life and death kings were not inanimate objects, they were not completely defenseless. Their bodies contained extreme power, and as long as they were powerful enough, they would be able to resist the powerful gravity. Moreover, the body of life and death kings was extremely tough. Even if they didn't use Zhen Yuan and dived into the magma, they would not be injured in the slightest. Most importantly, the martial will of life and death kings was extremely powerful, and could isolate powerful injuries. However, there was still a limit. The surface temperature of a white dwarf star was not much, but the gravity of tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of times that of Earth was too frightening. It was an existence that could crush atoms. Normally, only people at the sixth sky of life and death realm would be able to survive on a white dwarf star. This was because at the sixth sky of life and death realm, one's Zhen Yuan would be pure to an unimaginable level. Even the gravity of the white dwarf star would not be able to affect one's body. Of course, the sixth sky of life and death realm would not be able to fly on the white dwarf star, and could only walk or run. This black-robed youngster was only at the fourth sky of life and death realm, but he was able to survive on a white dwarf star. It was indeed a very frightening thing. However, this black-robed youngster was not a normal person. The energy outside his body was a protective chi layer, which meant that he was a body-refining king. Body-refining king's survival ability was way higher than other life and death kings. Their chi power was completely born from their cells, and they were at the forefront of the human body development. Each of the black-robed youngsters' punches carried 4 layers of overlapping ripples. This was the 4th layer power which could crush atoms. The 3rd layer power could crush the most basic molecules of matter, while the 4th layer power could crush atoms. Although the enemy was not completely defenseless, and could use their protective Zhen Yuan and martial will to counteract most of the power, they would still receive a huge amount of damage. The weaker ones would be directly blown into nothingness. It was just like how not everyone could survive on a white dwarf star. Perhaps even the black-robed youngster himself would not be able to withstand this punch, because this was a white dwarf star. Outside, the power of this punch would be even more powerful. Almost there. If I continue, my chi power will be completely used up. After an unknown period of time, the young man in black stopped. He did not have much energy left in his body. Once his energy was depleted, he would be crushed into powder and turned into nothingness. Training on a white dwarf star was a very dangerous thing to do. Walking step by step, the black-robed youngster arrived 10 meters away from where he was. There was a special rope hanging down, which did not break even under the gravity of the white dwarf star. Grabbing onto the rope, the black-robed youngster said softly, "Full speed." In the starry sky outside the white dwarf star, a small Sky King-level battleship maintained its momentum at all times to prevent itself from being pulled by the white dwarf star. As the black-robed youngster spoke, the battleship's momentum increased drastically, flying into the distance. The rope tied to the battleship pulled the black-robed youngster out. Sitting in the hull of the battleship and drinking wine, the black-robed youngster revealed a smile. "I, the Black Destruction King, am here. I wonder if you guys are ready?" Chapter 1050. After entering the Selfless Realm for the 10th time, Lan Xian finally grasped the ability to enter the Selfless Realm at any time. The Selfless Realm was indeed unbelievably powerful. Every time she entered the Selfless Realm, a small portion of her potential would transform into Lan Xian's own strength. After 10 times, her strength had increased slightly, but correspondingly, she began to feel tired. The Selfless Realm is a way to stimulate potential. If you enter the Selfless Realm consecutively in a short period of time, your potential will be stimulated too much. From now on, unless it's necessary, you cannot enter the Selfless Realm again. Yichen reminded Lan Xian. Yes. Lan Xian nodded. While you still have time, practice more basic swordsmanship. When you reach the God's trial field, I won't guide you anymore. You need to judge and evolve on your own. For some reason, Yichen always felt that Lan Xian had improved so fast with his help, and there would be some hidden dangers. Before this, she could not even perform the second drive, but now, she had already entered the Selfless Realm. Days passed. Lan Xian practiced basic swordsmanship on the left side of the yard, while Yichen practiced basic swordsmanship on the right. Qi. With a swing of the sword shadows filled the air with blinding white light. Qi. The sword swung out slowly, but it arrived in a flash. Profound of speed. Profound of slowness. I see. There is no absolute fast or slow in this world. Profound of speed is to strengthen the senses and body. Profound of slowness is the complement of profound of speed. Fast and slow were Taishi's illusions. They were a kind of understanding of speed. However, what was fast and what was slow? In the eyes of a normal person, a bird flew very fast. In the eyes of a warrior, a bird flew very slowly. In the eyes of a normal warrior, light was supreme. In Yichen's eyes, light was only about twice as fast as him. Everything came from the senses. If one's senses suddenly increased, one would discover that things that were fast would become very slow. One's speed and reaction would also become very slow. However, the senses belong to one's self. When the senses became stronger, one's body would correspondingly improve. In the end, the position between the two would become the same as before. The slowness profound meaning was a denial of oneself. It was like someone pouring a bucket of cold water on one's arrogance to wake one up. It was the supplement of the swiftness profound meaning. The selfless heavenly eye realm strengthens all senses. It's similar to the fast profound meaning. Perhaps they are the same thing. It's just that the process of entering is different. Soon, there was only 1 month left until the opening of the test field of God. Basically, all the geniuses from the 4 major galaxies had already set off for the test field of God. Young Master Yi, let's go. Compared to a few months ago, Lan Xian's essence, energy and spirit had improved greatly. It was as if she had been reborn. Xiner isn't going? Yichen asked. Lan Xian shook her head and said, she said she's not strong enough, so she won't go. Alright, let's go then. After all, Lan Xian's foundation was a little weak, and she didn't have any fighting spirit. It was hard for her to make a difference. In the life galaxies, there were some astral teleportation formations. These astral teleportation formations were made from an entire planet. They could teleport to another astral teleportation formation. The closest astral teleportation formation to planet Firebird was about 30 light-years away. Riding on the Golden Phantom, the two arrived in about 10 hours. The astral teleportation formation wasn't free. The cost depended on the distance. Since the test field of God was in the region between the 4 major galaxies, the two prepared to teleport to the innermost astral teleportation formation in the Vermilion Bird star region. The distance between the two was a shocking 1 million light-years. 10,000 light-years was 10 source stones, so 1 million light-years was 1,000 source stones. It was 5 times more expensive than riding on a Heavenly King battleship. Most people wouldn't choose to teleport. After all, source stones were hard to come by. Wait a little longer. We need to gather 100 people before we teleport. The astral teleportation formation's shape was very strange. Below it was a complete planet. Huge tubes of different lengths were inserted into the planet. The shortest was 100 miles, and the longest was 1,000 miles. At the end of the tubes were discs. The discs were the astral teleportation formations. At this moment, at the end of the longest tube, there were a few dozen people standing. At the edge of the disc stood an old man. He was the person in charge of the teleportation. 100 people will be very fast, Lord Yi, Lan Xianer said to Yichun. And there's no rush. Yichun nodded. After waiting for about 6 hours, 100 people were gathered. Whoosh! On the astral teleportation formation, a dazzling light exploded. Everyone disappeared without a trace. About 2 hours later, 100 people appeared on the astral teleportation formation in the innermost part of the Vermilion Bird star zone. Most of these 100 people were here for business. Only 2 were young people like Yichun and Lan Xianer. From Lan Xianer, Yichun learned that these 2 young people were part of the Firebird star's 10 prodigies. One was ranked 6th, Luo Yingkong, and the other was ranked 8th, Shattered Star Wang Yuanqing. Yuanqing, do you think he will pass the divine trial field? Luo Yingkong quietly asked Yuanqing. Yuanqing shook his head. I don't know. You should know that although we are part of the 10 prodigies, the Vermilion Bird star zone alone has more than 1,000 planets with life. The 4 major star zones together have more than 5,000 planets with life. There are tens of thousands of geniuses like us, but only 100 people can enter the Heavenly King ranking. Among these 100 people, perhaps no more than 10 can pass the divine trial field. It's too difficult. That's right. The Heavenly King ranking is full of monsters. It is indeed difficult to stand out. Aside from a few people, the others can't guarantee that they can keep their ranking. Among the tens of thousands of geniuses, no more than 1,000 people were prepared to give it their all. The others were here to experience the divine trial field. Luo Yingkong and Yuanqing were the same. If you wanted to go to the God's trial grounds, you had to go to God's planet first. On God's planet, there was a God's ship there. It was impossible to reach the God's trial grounds from other places, because no one knew where it was. As for the God's star, it was a small star with a diameter of only 1,000 miles. The gravity on it was equivalent to 1/10 of a white dwarf star. If one couldn't resist the gravity of the God's star, they would lose the right to enter the divine trial field. In other words, the divine trial field had begun the moment the God's star appeared. The God's star was 70,000 light-years away from the star transfer array. Riding the Golden Phantom, the two of them spent half a month before they reached the God's star. From afar, Yichun put away the Golden Phantom. The gravity of the God's star was very strong. It could pull a puppet warship over and tear it to pieces. Is this the God's star? After putting away the Golden Phantom, Yichun's gaze fell on a small star tens of thousands of miles away. This small star was golden, as if it was made of gold. There were no stars around it, nor were there any twinkling stars. It seemed to be shielded by an invisible power. The little golden star floated there by itself, noble and sacred. Buzz! Not far from Yichun, another small Heavenly King warship appeared. It was Luo Yingkong and Yuanqing. Let's go. Yichun took the lead and flew toward the God's star. Lan Xianer followed closely behind. Success or failure depends on this. Luo Yingkong took a deep breath. Her emotions were fluctuating. Don't worry. As long as we stay on the God's star for 6 hours, We will get a trial spell. With it, the gravity of the god's star will not affect us. Yuan Qing reached out his right hand and patted Luo Yingkong's shoulder. Under the pull of the god's star's gravity, Yi Chun and Lan Xian were involuntarily pulled over. The two slightly offset most of the gravity to avoid crashing into the god's star. As they got closer, the gravity they felt increased exponentially. Normal life and death realm warriors would be shattered in the process. Pap. Chapter 1051. Interesting. Do any of you know who he is? 100 miles away from Yi Chun, there was a small group of people. Each of them had a golden jade talisman around their necks. With the talismans, they didn't seem to feel the gravity of the god's star. The one who spoke was a tall woman with countless braids. She was taller than most of the people here, around 2 meters tall. However, she didn't look bulky. Her 2-meter height brought out her figure to the extreme. Her breasts were high, her waist slender, her thighs strong, and her butt perky. She was the beautiful snake Tusha, ranked 48th on the Sky King list. This small group of people were all monsters on the Sky King list. Of course, this was only limited to the Vermilion Bird Star region. After all, this was the god's star. I don't know. I've never seen him before. The bearded young man carrying a giant axe shook his head. Prince Jinghong was also in this small group. He was ranked 94th on the Sky King list. His eyes fell on Yi Chun and Lan Xian. He frowned slightly but didn't say anything. This guy sent the Hunter King flying so easily. He's not a simple character. Yes, the Hunter King is a madman on planet Orion. He hunts his prey for fun. With his top hunter's eyesight, he shouldn't be unable to see how strong his prey is. How strange. No, the Hunter King went there because he was lured there. Someone was secretly casting an illusion. At that moment, I felt the aura of an illusion, but the opponent's illusion skills were far above mine. I couldn't tell who cast the illusion, but if I think about it, I understand. In the younger generation of the Vermilion Bird Star region, there's only one person who can surpass me in illusion. On the god's star, there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Other than the monsters on the Sky King list, there were some who were very strong. For example, the person who came to this conclusion was an amazing person. He was the second king of illusion in the younger generation of the Vermilion Bird Star region. Isn't that? The people next to Sisua were about to look at the small group of people. Don't do anything stupid. His illusions have already reached the realm of being able to be released from his heart. The moment you look over, his illusions will follow your gaze back. Who knows, it might make you do the same thing as the Hunter King. Sisua reminded them. Oh, I almost forgot. That was close. You illusionists are too sick. I'd rather be defeated cleanly than meet you. The few of them were secretly afraid. Siso smiled and thought to himself, the pursuit of an illusionist is to replace the truth with an illusion. They use their own will to change everything that they can feel, and even everything that they can't feel. This is where the joy of an illusionist lies. It's a pity that too few people choose the path of an illusionist. The evil spirit race is a good target. Hey Ji Qingyue, aren't you a little too bored? That guy isn't someone you can toy with. A slender and well-proportioned arm wrapped around the shoulders of the evil-looking young man. The owner of the arm was very delicate, but a little cynical, as if he didn't care about anything. He was the cheerful type, and his eyes were always squinting. The joy of illusions lies in doing as one pleases. You won't understand. The young man wasn't used to having his shoulder held, so he took a step to the right. Don't be so cold, Mr. Yi. The one who attacked us just now was the Hunter King of planet Orion. Lan Xian said to Yi Chun. Yi Chun shook his head. No, he wasn't the one who attacked us. It wasn't him. Then who was it? Lan Xian didn't understand. It won't do you any good if you know. Illusions were cast from the heart. Once someone paid attention to them, they would be able to sense it. It was better for Lan Xian not to know, but she hoped that the other party would stop now. As for what had happened earlier, she would just treat it as the other party's test. More and more people were eliminated. From around 40,000 people, it was reduced to less than 15,000 people. 6 hours later, Yi Chun and Lan Xian each obtained a jade talisman. Lan Xian looked down at the jade talisman around her neck and exclaimed, "How magical! A single trial talisman can offset all the gravity. Soul power, sword intent, quintessential essence, all methods had been tested. Yichen didn't find anything special about the trial talisman. It seemed to be just an ordinary jade talisman. Is this the power of a true god? Success! I've finally succeeded." Not far away, Broken Star King Yuanqing's face revealed a joyous expression. For those powerful geniuses, the purpose of participating in the god test field was to distinguish themselves and ultimately pass. However, for Yuanqing and the majority of the others, being able to see the god test field was already enough to satisfy them. As geniuses, if they couldn't see the god test field in their lifetime, they would undoubtedly regret it for the rest of their lives. Firebird Planet also had young Master Song Yu and young Master Firebird. Although young Master Song Yu couldn't even withstand one move from Lung Fifan, that was because Lung Fifan was too powerful, not because young Master Song Yu was weak. Moreover, after 8 months of training, young Master Song Yu's strength was clearly much stronger than when he had challenged Lung Fifan. It wouldn't be strange for him to last 6 hours. The Firebird Prince was able to endure for 6 hours mainly because his cultivation base had increased from peak 3rd Sky of Life and Death Realm to 4th Sky of Life and Death Realm. Even so, he had suffered a lot. His whole body was soaked in sweat, and he did not have much Zhen Yuan left. If he were to go on for another hour, he would definitely be eliminated. After all, resisting gravity had nothing to do with offensive power. Of these two, one had arrived earlier than Yi Chun and Lan Xianer, and the other had arrived later. As for Lan Xianer, apart from the initial difficulty, she was relatively relaxed. After all, she was still at the 4th layer. If she hadn't been asleep for 5 years, she would have been even more powerful. Including Yi Chun, Firebird Star had a total of 6 people who had passed the initial trial and obtained the trial talisman. "How do you feel?" Giving up on studying the trial talisman, Yi Chun asked Lan Xianer, "I feel like my body has woken up. It's a feeling of contentment." Lan Xianer said slowly, "That's good. After sleeping for 5 years, you received my training as soon as you woke up, and your strength advanced by leaps and bounds. It felt a bit unreal, but the gravity of the god star has completely eliminated this feeling." Yi Chun was very clear about Lan Xianer's mental state. "It seems so." Lan Xianer nodded. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. In the distant pitch-black sky, a huge golden shadow suddenly appeared. This golden shadow was much larger than the god star. It seemed slow, but it was actually moving at an extremely fast speed. The boring time is finally over. A few hundred meters to the north of the small group of people, a black-clothed young man was lying on the ground. His trial talisman was not on his body. Instead, it was placed a meter away. In other words, he was under the pressure of the god's star and was resting on the ground. This level of endurance could only be described as shocking. Slowly climbing up, the black-robed youngster picked up the trial talisman and revealed a smile. "It's the god ship," someone exclaimed. Yi Chun and Lan Xianer looked over. The golden shadow in the pitch-black sky was a huge star-like golden battleship, the same color as the god star. What was surprising was that the sails of the golden battleship were not made of cloth, but a kind of solid gold-like material. Rumble! Soon, the god ship connected with the god star. Compared to the god ship, the god star was like a small dock, not even 1/10 the size of the former. A huge ladder extended to the god star. "Let's go." Everyone followed the ladder and boarded the god ship. "Let's go as well." Yi Chun walked in the front, and Lan Xianer followed beside him. "How nostalgic. I can't even remember what happened in the god trial field." The black-robed youngster walked at the back alone. After everyone boarded the ship, the ladder was put away. The ship of God turned around and headed back to where it came from. Its speed became faster and faster, and it became more and more terrifying. In the end, it seemed to have transcended time and space, wandering at the edge of time and space. At the same time, the geniuses of Azure Dragon Starfield, White Tiger Starfield, and Black Tortoise Starfield had all boarded the god ship, heading toward an unknown place. Between the four great starfields was an unknown place, and also a forbidden zone. Ninth Sky of Life and Death Realm experts might be able to roam around in the periphery, but once they got too close to the center or the core, they would disappear completely. Some speculated that they might be trapped in the space-time turbulence, never to come out. The mighty power of true gods could only be seen in the four great starfields. After an unknown amount of time, the god ship reached the shore, and the ladder was lowered. Standing on the god ship, nobody could see anything, but stepping down the ladder and stepping on the solid ground, they couldn't help but exclaim. This was an incomparably huge continent. This continent was completely barren, and at the center of the continent was a huge golden gate of unknown height. Above the gate were 3 words, God Trial Field. Is this the God's Trial Field? Just by looking at it, I can tell that it's not something a human can build. This is the power of a true God. Only a true God could build such a shocking golden door. Someone murmured. Creak. The golden gate opened, and a dazzling golden light spread out, enveloping everyone. In the next moment, they felt their bodies lighten, and then they lost consciousness. In the other 3 directions, there were also 3 continents and 3 golden gates. The geniuses of Azure Dragon Starfield, White Tiger Starfield, and Black Tortoise Starfield were all enveloped by the golden light and sent into the golden gates. The place where Yichen appeared was a misty forest. There was no one around him, as if the golden light had purposely separated them, letting them move on their own. Buzz! Suddenly, the trial rune on Yichen's chest emitted a bright light. Shortly after, a several meters wide light screen appeared in front of Yichen. On the light screen were numerous golden dots, and Yichen's position was the first golden dot. You want me to go to the next golden dot? The light screen dispersed, and Yichen took a step forward, entering the dense fog. Chapter 1052. The misty forest was filled with danger. Screams would occasionally break the silence, rising and falling. Pu. Broken Star Wang Yuanqing had just entered the mist when he was attacked by wave after wave of arrows. The mist of the god's trial field was no ordinary mist. It had the powerful ability to isolate soul strength. Here, one could only rely on the 6 senses to sense danger, such as sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and the 6th sense, intuition. Everyone had 6 senses, but some were strong and some were weak. After dodging the countless arrows, Yuanqing didn't even have time to catch his breath. Suddenly, in front and behind him, 2 enormous steel walls covered in spikes came flying at him. Not good. Yuanqing was shocked. The entire god's trial field was filled with a viscous, formless energy that caused his speed to greatly decrease. These 2 steel walls were incomparably fast, surpassing his speed. There was no way he could dodge them. Since he couldn't dodge, he could only go all out. Yuanqing's weapons were 2 large hammers, one on the left and one on the right. Yuanqing used all his strength to smash at the steel walls. The sound of metal twisting rang out. The steel walls were pushed back by Yuanqing. Pooh! Abruptly, a spear fell from the sky, piercing through Yuanqing's head and nailing him to the ground. Damn! Outside the golden door, Yuanqing's figure appeared. The trial talisman on his chest suddenly shattered. Could it be that I, the Firebird Prince, can't even pass the first stage? A fiery red light flashed. The Firebird Prince jumped up and down, looking extremely wretched. Behind him were countless golden dots of light. These golden dots of light were hornets that seemed to be made of gold. They were as big as fists and their wings flapped. They were like flying swords cutting through the air, incomparably sharp. The Firebird Prince tried to attack the hornets, but found that even with his full strength, he could only kill a few. The remaining hornets were enough to sting him to death. In the end, the Firebird Prince was stung by a hornet. His body went numb, and in the next instant countless hornets pounced on him. Lan Xian also encountered hundreds of golden wasps, but she was lucky. These wasps had a special structure, and if she used a pure killing move, she could only kill 7 or 8 at a time. But if she used second drive, she could kill more than 20, and if she used third drive, she could kill a large group. In other words, these golden hornets were used to test the extent of their control over their strength. And the most direct manifestation of their control over their strength was how many bursts they had. Generally speaking, if one had attained the second drive and was slightly stronger, they would be able to contend against the Golden Hornets without being defeated in a single clash. Of course, defeating the Golden Hornets didn't mean they were out of danger. There were traps everywhere in the dense fog forest, and the Golden Hornets were released from one of them. Kachak! The branch under her feet broke, and Lan Xian'er was alarmed. She bent down subconsciously, and with a poochy sound, a snow-white light brushed past her back. That cold sharpness made her feel cold all over. Before she could take a breath, Lan Xian'er jumped up. Below her, the two steel walls were locked together without a single crack. However, the real danger had just arrived. From all directions, countless golden arrows shot over. The golden arrows had spiral patterns on their tips. Once hit, even her protective Zhenyuan wouldn't be able to withstand it. Everything has its flaws. As long as you can find their blind spots, you will be able to get twice the result with half the effort. Yi Chen's words were still fresh in her memory. Taking a deep breath, the Zhenyuan in Lan Xian'er's body split. Most of it gathered in her arms, and the rest went to her eyes. In her vision, the arrows slowed down a bit. It looked like they were all shooting at her at the same time, but there were actually different directions. Only about half of them could threaten her, and that was if she didn't move. Break for me! With a flash of sword light, Lan Xian'er slashed out 5 times. Ding 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 ding. Suddenly, the sound of metal colliding filled the air. Lan Xian'er's 5 swords changed the trajectory of the 5 golden arrows, causing them to hit the other golden arrows. Just like that, it was like dominoes, creating a chain reaction that caused the seemingly unsolvable rain of arrows to collapse on itself. Xiao! However, just as Lan Xian'er let out a breath, a golden arrow passed through a large amount of arrow fragments and pierced through Lan Xian'er's protective Zhenyuan. In the end, Lan Xian'er was nailed to the tree. Fortunately, there were no more traps. Pulling out the golden arrow, Lan Xian'er still had lingering fear. She didn't think that the first trial of the gods' trial field would be so abnormal. The traps were one after another, not giving people a chance to catch their breath. If there had been another wave of attacks, she wouldn't even have had the time to open the Immortal state. Of course, this was also because she had been asleep for 5 years, and hadn't fought anyone for 5 years. After all, no matter how high her strength increased, she still needed a large amount of battle experience. Now is not the time to open the Immortal state. If I can't even pass the first trial, it proves that I'm just so. Lan Xian'er gave up on entering the Immortal state and continued forward. There were too many people who were stopped in the misty forest. Some were turned into beehives by the arrow rain. Some were stung to death by the golden hornets like Prince Firebird, and some were crushed into a bloody pulp by the steel walls. There were as many ways to die as there were traps in the misty forest. Some of the ways to die were strange and unheard of. There were about 15,000 geniuses from the Vermilion Bird Star region who had come to the gods' trial field. However, in this short period of time, at least half of them had died. Some geniuses who thought that they were very powerful had also died. They might be able to beat most of the geniuses in a one-on-one battle, but in the misty forest, survival was the test. The dead people appeared outside the Golden Gate one after another. The trial talismans on their chests shattered. Damn, even I, the Loose Hand King, couldn't pass the first trial. It's too hard. I couldn't even react in time. I guess at least 2/3 of the people will be eliminated. No wonder people say that it's enough to see the gods' trial field. Don't expect to pass the first trial. Outside the Golden Gate, more and more people gathered. Everyone was discussing in low spirits. For most of the people, the first challenge was indeed very difficult. Even if they tried their best, they would still be eliminated. The rest of the people might also be eliminated if they were not careful enough. However, for people at Yi Chen's level, the first challenge would only help them to warm up their muscles and bones. It was just an appetizer. His figure was like a ghost. Wave after wave of arrows passed through the illusions left behind by Yi Chen, unable to harm him in the slightest. Before the 2 steel walls could even get close, a corner was cut off. The flying chains were sent flying, entangling a large metal ball that swung over like a pendulum. Due to the entanglement of the chains, the large metal ball changed its trajectory and smashed down the golden iron man that was released from the mechanism. The sound of metal clanging spread out like a wave, flattening everything around it. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yi Chen had traversed the entire misty forest and arrived before a racetrack. This racetrack was 1,000 meters wide and long, with no end in sight. The moment Yi Chen came out, 7 or 8 people dashed out at the same time. They were the black-robed young man, the frivolous handsome young man, the saber wielder with a cross scar on his cheek, the 2-meter-tall beauty with her hair tied up in braids, the bearded young man, the devilishly handsome young man, and the graceful prince. In the next instant, another dozen people dashed out. Most of them were geniuses on the Heavenly King list, but of course, there were some who weren't. The black-robed young man and the handsome young man sized up Yi Chen. They didn't expect him to be so fast, passing through the misty forest in an instant, even though they didn't go all out. In front of the racetrack, there was a wooden board. There were no rules written on it, only rewards. The first to reach the finish line would be rewarded with 10 shinbi. The second would be rewarded with 5. And the third would be rewarded with 2. What's shinbi? The handsome young man was puzzled. Those who pass the gods' trial field will be qualified to enter the paradise of gods. It's said that shinbi is the currency of the paradise of gods. In any case, it's good stuff. The black-robed young man was very confident in himself. He didn't think that the first place would fall to anyone else, so there was no harm in telling them. The currency of the paradise of gods? Looks like the more the better. The 2-meter-tall Dusha licked her red lips. The black-robed young man chuckled. You better be mentally prepared. Anything that involves shinbi will be very difficult. It won't be easy to get shinbi. It's just a racetrack. How hard can it be? More and more people arrived. Some geniuses who were quite accomplished in speed didn't care. Since there was a racetrack, it naturally had to be fair. They needed to wait for everyone to arrive before starting. About an hour later, everyone had arrived. Of the 15,000 people who passed through the misty forest, only 4,000 or so had passed. The elimination rate was more than 70%. Prince He, Lan Xian came to Yi Chen's side. This racetrack isn't that simple. It might not be a test of speed. Speed wasn't the most important factor in judging a genius, even though being slow wasn't good either. After everyone had arrived, the light screen in front of the racetrack opened. Shoo! Almost in an instant, dozens of figures rushed out. Damn, there's gravity. We can't use Jin Yuan. How is this possible? Of those who rushed out, more than half of them fell to the ground in an incomparably sorry state. The genius who rushed out the fastest was clearly the type who was fast in speed, but weak in other aspects. His chin was stuck to the ground as he slid out several thousand meters. His body was badly mangled, and he was in an extremely miserable state. A bunch of idiots. The black-robed young man slowly walked on the track and closed his eyes. I can't use Zhen Yuan or any other energy. The gravity is 1/20th of the god's star. It really isn't that simple. Opening his eyes, the black-robed young man started running. Close to 200,000 times the Earth's gravity. For most people, this is probably an extreme test. Yi Chen looked at the endless racetrack and shook his head. Chapter 1053. More than 4,000 people were all running on the track. Just like a marathon, no one increased their speed. Those who could make it here were all geniuses among geniuses. Before understanding the rules, they might have been impulsive, but after understanding the rules, it would be hard for them to be impulsive. Most importantly, everyone wanted to win. Some geniuses were self-aware and thought that their strength was inferior to others, but when it came to stamina, they wouldn't admit defeat. So what if you're on the Heavenly King list? Who knows how long this track will be? I don't believe your stamina is also higher than ours. Haha, I'm a body refiner king. Stamina is my strong point. Is that so? Don't you know that in terms of stamina, we demonic beasts are the best? A young man laid down and turned into a 7-meter-long demonic dog. His powerful muscles and streamlined body made him run full of power and beauty. 2 hours passed. 6 hours passed. Under the enormous gravity and the inability to use Zhen Yuan, everyone ran for 12 hours. Of course, this amount of time wasn't enough to make them tired. The stamina of life and death kings could be described as abnormal. Starting from astral reaching realm, humans and demonic beasts would all evolve. For example, before astral reaching realm, the lifespan of humans was only a bit longer than ordinary people, still roughly at the level of ordinary people. At astral reaching realm, one could live for 200 years, 500 years at Sea of Soul realm, and 100,000 years at life and death realm. 3 evolutions, each more exaggerated than the last. Especially the third evolution, it was no longer an ordinary evolution, but an evolution of the origin. It was as huge as the difference between a unicellular organism and a human. You work hard. I'm going to speed up. Yi Chun and Lan Xiener were in the middle of the team. There were roughly 2,000 people ahead, and another 2,000 behind. This was a very disadvantageous position. Under the soul power perception, the group at the front was already several tens of thousands of li away. If they wanted to fight for the top 3, they couldn't be left behind too much. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have time to catch up. Yeah, Lan Xiener nodded. Swish. Exerting his strength through his feet, Yi Chen's whole body turned into a phantom as he shot out, overtaking dozens of people within a second. What was even more frightening was that when he ran, he did not make any sound at all, just like a cat. What kind of speed is this? The person who was overtaken took a while to react. About an hour later, Yi Chen arrived at the very front. There were only 30 to 40 people left in front of him. However, Yi Chen did not slow down. Instead, he sped up slightly. Who is this guy? Who cares what kind of divine being he is? Since he dares to surpass us, then we'll just let him be at the bottom. To be able to run at the front, how could their strength be simple? At the very least, they would be in the top 100 of the Vermilion Bird star field. A ferocious tiger charged at Yi Chen the moment he and Yi Chun were shoulder to shoulder. Patter! Yi Chen didn't even look at it. With a casual wave of his arm, the tiger's bones were all shattered, and it was sent flying. When it landed on the ground, it completely disappeared from the track, losing the right to participate in the trial by fire. Hiss! The few people who were just about to make a move sucked in a breath of cold air. The one who made a move was the demon race genius Iron Tiger King, ranked 99th on the Heavenly King list. Not to mention strength, just in terms of physical strength, there were not many who could surpass him. Yet, he was actually unable to withstand Yi Chen's arm strike. What kind of terrifying strength was this? You'd better not do anything stupid. Otherwise, all of you will be eliminated. Yi Chen's voice had a trace of coldness to it. After a few breaths, Yi Chen had left them far behind. This guy is a monster that can't be provoked. The Iron Tiger King is really unlucky. I don't understand why he didn't stay at the front from the start. Otherwise, the Iron Tiger King wouldn't have provoked him. Monsters think differently from us. Who knows? Gradually, there were only 5 people left in front of Yi Chen. They were all black-clothed youths. A saber wielder with a cross-shaped scar on his cheek, a 2-meter-tall woman with a head full of braids, a winged black panther, and a bearded young man carrying a giant axe. These 5 people didn't mean that they were the strongest in the group. It could only be said that their speed, endurance, and stamina surpassed ordinary people. At the very least, some of the people Yi Chen overtook were extremely dangerous people, such as the handsome young man with a strange demeanor. Hee, there's a new member. The beautiful snake lady Medusa looked over. Quite powerful. I wonder how long he can last. The bearded young man said lightly. In a situation where they didn't know how long the track was, no one dared to increase their speed to the limit. Everyone would only maintain their speed at the limit that they could accept. For example, 30%, 40%, or even 50%. Very few people exceeded 50%. After all, the faster the speed, the faster the stamina would be consumed. It was not a wise move. I bet he can last more than 2 days. Among the 5, the black-clothed young man didn't bother to speak. The saber wielder was very cold. The winged black panther also didn't like to talk. Therefore, only Medusa and the bearded young man spoke. This young man was ranked 42nd on the king list. People called him Great Axe Xiao Erlang. 2 days later, I won. Medusa giggled. I didn't bet with you. Xiao Erlang rolled his eyes. 1 week later. I can't run anymore. How long is this damn track? Who knows? Anyway, in these 10 days, just from what I saw, more than 30 people were eliminated. What a tragedy. In such a harsh environment, everyone could last 1 or 2 days. But after 10 days, many people were exhausted and lost the right to continue. 20 days later, including the ones before, was an entire month. Forget it, I'm not running anymore. If I keep running, I'll die of exhaustion. After a month of running, more than 90% of the participants had collapsed. The number of people still running was less than 300. The terror of the God trial field was far beyond their imagination. Even Yi Chen didn't expect that the track would be so long, as if there was no end. I can't hold on anymore. Lan Xian'er was soaked in sweat. Her vision was blurry. She didn't think she could finish the entire track. But until the last moment, she wouldn't allow herself to fall. At this point, it's no longer a test of endurance and stamina. It's more of a test of will. Turning his head, the vertical eye between his brows opened. Yi Chen saw Lan Xian'er. Is this guy a monster? Right now, Du Sha was exhausted to death. Seeing that Yi Chen did not have a trace of fatigue, she was completely convinced. Another 2 days passed. This was the 33rd day. Lan Xian'er walked as if she was sleepwalking. Her eyes had lost focus, and her face was frighteningly pale. She had already lost consciousness. The only thing that kept her going was her unyielding will. On the track, a person was quickly catching up to the people in front of him. It was a playful young man, but his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Hey Du Sha, I've caught up to you. How come I'm so far behind? Du Sha turned her head and said with a bitter smile. You finally have some fighting spirit. The handsome young man was ranked 12th on the Heavenly King list. People called him Ghost Genius Lu Wenxiu. His talent was publicly recognized. If he had a bit of fighting spirit, it would be easy for him to rank in the top 10. I can't help it. I'm a person who can't bring up fighting spirit. But the length of the track is beyond imagination. I'm interested. Lu Wenxiu grinned. The 4 people in front are not easy to surpass. I wish you a safe journey. Du Sha waved her hand. She didn't even have the strength to speak at this moment. Sending the guy away was the right thing to do. Then I'll go first. His figure flickered as Lu Wenxiu's speed soared. Truly a monster among monsters. Du Sha was speechless. At noon, Lu Wenxiu finally caught up to the 4 people in front. Ghost Genius, you finally caught up. Xiao Erlang greeted. I've kept you waiting. Lu Wenxiu's face was neither red nor out of breath. This guy has caught up. Lu Wenxiu's arrival attracted the attention of Blade Man and Black Panther. Ghost Genius Lu Wenxiu was a famous name in the other 3 great starfields. Many 9th-layer life and death experts had praised him, saying that his talent was one of the strongest in the 4 great starfields. There were no more than 3 who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Yi Chen was also paying attention to Lu Wenxiu. This guy's physical strength was not necessarily stronger than others, but his utilization of strength had reached a frightening level. No matter how fast his speed was, he was always in the most effortless state. There was also a sun in the God trial field. The dazzling sunlight shone on everyone's body. Suddenly, a strand of glaring golden radiance flickered. We've reached the finish line. That's the triumphal arch, Xiao Erlang said. The end of the track was still nowhere to be seen, but everyone could see a huge golden triumphal arch. It was unknown how far this arch was from where they were, but they could see it clearly. I'm going to speed up. See you guys. The winged Black Panther's speed soared again and again. In the blink of an eye, it had increased by several times, leaving the 4 several hundred li behind. However, the 4 caught up again in the next moment. What a joke! The first place is mine. The black-robed youngster sneered and continued to increase his speed. That's not necessarily true. Blade Man chased closely. I, Xiao Erlang, still have 30% of my physical strength. Xiao Erlang was ranked 42nd on the Heavenly King ranking. But in terms of physical strength, he was at least in the top 10. Right now we're not competing in physical strength but explosive power. Lu Wenxiu's hair was blown backward. His narrowed eyes opened slightly, and a cold light flashed in them. At this moment, his true appearance was slightly revealed. You guys really are a bit hard to deal with. In that case, I'll leave you all in the dust. The black-robed youngster took a deep breath and leaned forward. With a rumble, he shot forward like a bolt of black lightning, his explosive power breaking the ground. Damn! The Black Panther even used its wings, but it was still left further and further behind by the black-robed youngster. Just how monstrous are these people? Hundreds of thousands of li away. Du Xiao's sole power sensed the 5 people in front of her. Other than dumbfounded, she had no words to describe them. The black-robed youngster left a trail of dust in his wake. The 4 people behind him were getting further and further away. Ten Shinbi for the first place, I can't let him go. Thinking of Ten Shinbi, Yi Chen's eyes flashed with a cold light. Under the gazes of the 3, Yi Chen's speed rose to the limit. Because of his speed, his afterimages were still left behind. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.